All right. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is joining us from Los Angeles. Michael, you're right in the belly of the beast, so to speak. You're near the eye of the storm in terms of these walls of fire. So let's go right to what's going on right now.
Well, I haven't checked the up to the minute stuff, but unfortunately, the winds are picking up again.
Yeah.
And for your viewers, the deal with these Santa Ana winds is that normally the wind in Southern California comes off the ocean. But between November and January every year, it comes off the desert. So it's hot and dry and will promote fires. However, it doesn't necessarily follow, although they're trying to get everyone to believe this now, that Santa Ana winds equal fire. It's not the case. There's something else going on here, which we can talk about in a minute, but this is the worst fires in LA history by far.
Can I just ask you for a clarification? Because what we're hearing is that, and this is sort of the global warmer crowd, that these Santa Ana winds have never been this bad in history, and that it has everything to do with global warming.
No, it's got nothing to do with global warming. The Santa Ana winds have been around forever.
Sure, it's a natural phenomenon.
And they're going to try to blame everything on so-called global warming, but it has nothing to do with it. What has
Are the winds stronger than in the past? I mean, is it? Do you feel that it's a bigger wind than it's been?
No. In fact, I was around for the Bel Air fire of 1961, which is a horrible fire, pales in comparison to this one.
Right.
But there were huge winds in the Bel Air fire, 70 to 80 miles an hour. No. Okay. What is causing this, assuming an innocent explanation, which, by the way, it isn't, but let's go with the innocent explanation. Well, the brush hasn't been cleared. They talk about the hydrants running dry. That's not true. There are now pictures of the reservoir in Pacific Palisades has been empty since at least 2011.
Why?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
How could that be?
Incompetence, and I'm saying for your viewers, on purpose, to build the 15-minute city, right? We're going to force everybody out of private home ownership. And remember, they tried that in Maui.
Yeah, Lahaina. But Michael, and I think that this was done in several locations around the world. The creation of as you say, the 15-minute city. This is part of the World Economic Forum. But the difference here is that, I mean, these are the richest neighborhoods in the country. I mean, this is like the richest neighborhoods, therefore, in the world. These are the big shot, left-wing, liberal Hollywood moguls and actors and actresses, and just, sort of the cream of the crop. I mean, are they going to do it to themselves?
No, I don't think they did it to themselves. But if you contrast this with Maui a couple of years ago, it was only the poor people in Maui that got hit. And the wealthy people like Oprah and so on mysteriously were unaffected by the fires. So
they had their roofs painted in a certain way. I know that sounds a little conspiratorial, but there are pictures showing that those houses were not touched and everything else was burnt to the ground.
Well, that's exactly right. So what they did here was, again, let's go back to what I like talking about, inductive reasoning. All right.
Mm-hmm.
The reason inductive reasoning is suppressed in our society is that people might come to conclusions. All right. For the viewers, inductive reasoning is taking a specific observation and coming to a general conclusion, as opposed to taking a series of specific observations and coming to an even more specific conclusion. Deductive reasoning would say policemen wear blue uniforms. Joe is a policeman, therefore he wears a blue uniform. All right, deductive reasoning has very little utility other than extremely specific if you're going to solve a crime or something like that. Yeah. Inductive would mean, wait a minute, what the hell's going on with all these fires? Why are the reservoirs dry? Why are there incompetent people installed in charge? There must be some other reason going on. But here's the beauty part of it. Go back to sports betting. Every football game has a point spread, all right? You can affect the point spread by little things that players might do during the game, all right? Mm-hmm. Did he actually drop that pass? Did he purposely drop that pass? You have no way of proving it. You have no way of knowing. You could use inductive reasoning. You say, wait a minute, the point spread was 4 points, and by him dropping that pass, it shaves the point spread.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, if you have incompetent leadership, if you have dry reservoirs, if you haven't cut back the brush in some areas, I've told now for 30 years, what the hell do you expect? So I'm saying this is on purpose.
No, I mean, look, we could look at in the vein of inductive reasoning. You don't have these kinds of wildfires in Europe and they have huge forests in Germany, in Scandinavia, because they manage their forests like you'd manage any other crop. I mean, they'll rake them. They use controlled burns sometimes. They build roads that kind of keep things a little bit separate so that you can't get a fire that jumps as quickly. They use pretty provable, pretty, standard methods of preserving their forests. Whereas in California, they don't do any of it, apparently.
Well, what happened was they brought in these environmental restrictions. But again, on purpose, it's not by accident.
Right.
So this is a habitat for some grasshopper or whatever the hell it might be.
Some kind of a smelt, like a...
Well, the smelt has to do with the water, all right?
Okay.
The voters a few years ago passed a law, passed a proposition that would have brought some water from Northern California down to Southern California. This was blocked because there's some smelt that could be affected. So the water is being pissed away into the ocean. All right.
Right.
So it's just a massive, call it conspiracy. But the idea
ironically, is, I mean, to even add to that, according to the Gateway Pundit, their article, that no one has even seen this smelt for over 10 years. They don't even know if it exists.
Well, that's the other thing, that it may not even exist, or this may have been just some BS excuse to try to do something. But if there is good news in this, there is a strong possibility that the entire corrupt Democratic establishment in this state is going to be out. All right.
I think that the state could go back to its becoming a red state. I mean, you have Newsom, that Trump, I think, named it, as Trump is often right. He spoke about it with Newsom during his first term during a fire. There's video of him with Newsom saying, I think that it would be a good idea if you divert even a small portion of the billions of gallons of fresh water that are dumped into the ocean out of Northern California into, a system of pipelines or aqueducts or whatever to bring it to the South. And Newsom kind of, on the one hand, he responded by saying, oh, thank you, very good advice. Then he didn't do diddly squat.
Yeah.
But also, now he's come out with a statement saying, well, we didn't do it because it would have hurt the Delta smelt.
Yeah, well, then, and as you say, that may not even be true. I mean, it's ridiculous even if it is true, but it may not even be true anyway. Okay.
So then this does raise the question of what, as you say, with inductive reasoning, what, when you put together all of the different moving parts in this thing. The empty, the empty reservoir, the claims of global warming, the not raking the forests, all of it, then it does bring up the question of why did they do this? Why did they allow this to happen?
Well, I mean, it comes back to the globalist agenda, right? That the people, these sick individuals who seem to have a lot of sway over world leaders, but then they recruit stupid world leaders, guys like Justin Trudeau, Gavin Newsom, Biden, and so on. You don't need to own a house. We're going to take care of you. We're going to control you in our 15-minute cities. And just to show that we're not playing favorites, we're going to burn down Palisades, Malibu, whatever. Now, these, you have to understand, 80% of the people that live in those areas are Democrat.
And very wealthy Democrats. This is what I'm kind of having trouble understanding, because you mentioned Lahaina in Hawaii. Those houses by those rich fat cats weren't touched, but here they do seem to be losing the homes. I mean, or am I wrong? I mean,
these areas are hit. I mean, I grew up close to Palisades. I was there all the time. There's nothing left.
Oh, it looks like the surface of the moon. It's completely...
Well, it looks like the surface of the moon, and they were trying to give the impression, well, it was just these houses up in the hills. No, it's the flats, it's the normie part of Palisades. That's all gone. I think they jumped the shark on this one.
I mean, it looks like Dresden after World War II. It's like bombs fell. I mean, Barbara Streisand, I don't know if her house is still standing, but she's already blaming Trump. I mean, she's not even in office yet. I don't think anybody's buying that. He hasn't even been sworn in yet. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't wait like a few more weeks to do this, because then they could have blamed Trump. But, they're doing it during the last miserable, corrupt days of this pathetic, illegitimate regime. And their response has been dreadful. I think that even, as you say, I mean, they're jumping the shark in that even liberals are becoming red-pilled when they see this mayor, who is a former member of the Vensamenos Brigade.
Yes, a lot of people don't know that. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yep. She has back and forth to Cuba in the 70s, loved Castro, was trained in Cuba. This Vensamenos Brigade is a radical leftist Cuban group that seeks to, basically undermine the United States. They're basically Cuban spies, which is what she is.
Yeah.
And also her election was like a lot going on in California. It looks fishy. Her opponent was a legitimate businessman, also a liberal Democrat. What?
Yeah, it was Rick Caruso, who's
Rick Caruso, that's right. And he was a liberal Democrat. I mean, he wasn't some right winger, but he was winning. And then there's all this funny business. They're counting to, all of a sudden they keep counting and they keep counting, and suddenly she gets the spot. Maybe that could be affected. I don't know. Are Californians aware of this? Are they thinking about this, or what's going on?
Well, they're thinking about it. In fact, I was contacted by a friend of mine from back east, and he said, "What the hell is going on? Everybody's a lesbian, all right? The mayor, the fire chief, the assistant fire chief, all right. But it gets worse, all right. The issue with running out of water, all right. When they discovered that these reservoirs were dry for maybe as long as 15 years, all right. What happened with what we call the LA Department of Water and Power? Used to be one of the most prestigious utilities in the country.
Right.
All right. What happened was we've gone through 3 directors of the LADWP just during the tenure of Mayor Bass. All right. The one now is a DEI hire from Puerto Rico who speaks very poor English, and by the way, What kind of a recommendation is that? The power system in Puerto Rico is a joke. So why would you bring her in?
Does she have any background in water resource management? I mean, and not to mention the fact that according to the Gateway Pundit, she's the highest paid public employee in the state. She got $650,000 a year.
Actually, it's 750, but let me mention why. The argument was made that she has to be paid this salary because her predecessor was put in prison for bribery. So I guess we got to pay her a lot of money so she won't get.
Why should she get anything out of that? That doesn't make any sense at all.
All right. So it's absolutely pathetic. And all the people that believe in DEI are getting, as I would put it, their feelings hurt big time.
Yeah, DEI is taking a big hit on this one. And they, as they did in New Orleans, it's like you get the minute this happens, some woman comes out with a nose ring and declares that this wasn't a terrorist act. They're having the same thing in Los Angeles. I mean, the website of the fire chief, our first priority is DEI, not trying to, find water, not worrying about actual firefighting. It's all, this is what's happened to the U.S. military. And Trump has talked about cleaning it up along with Hegseth, which is a great thing. But I don't know, on the state level over there in California, I mean, they cut the budget for the fire department by $18.5 million.
Right.
And this is California. We should again note it's not a poor place. This is one of the richest governments in the world. I mean, California has the sixth largest economy in the world.
The city of LA has spent untold billions on homeless people. All right. So basically what's going on, and this is why it's going to change, is the city has been disproportionately influenced probably since its inception, but that's not really fair because in the inception of LA, it only was central LA. But even when the suburbs were beginning to develop, and it's not a suburb because all these areas were annexed by the city. So there's a very large area called the San Fernando Valley, part of the city. And there was a proposition many years ago, I think in the 1980s, that they wanted to secede. Well, everybody in the valley wanted to secede. But it was put to the vote of the whole city. There was some corruption in the voting, and they kept the valley in the city. All right. But the point is that the downtown interests and the west side have controlled things forever. Well, now their ox is being gored. All right. Brentwood, Palisades, Malibu, all these wealthy communities on the west side are getting hit. And suddenly all these people are getting literally red-pilled by fire.
It could be a collapse of the whole rotten machine. I mean, plus it's just a cultural tragedy because Los Angeles is made up of all of these, basically these small villages, in the same way that New York is made up of neighborhoods, and that some of them are being completely wiped out. These are villages that have been around for hundreds of years in some cases. These are, I mean, I have an uncle who owned a house that's been apparently wiped out. I mean, there's a small stucco house that he moved there in the 1920s. He's passed away, but we know relatives there who've told us that the place is gone, and that these are great cultural places. I mean, this is destroyed. No,
they let it get out of hand, but make no mistake, this was on purpose. All the elements were there. You put in incompetent people under DEI. Now think about this. If you really wanted to do DEI, there probably are a lot of competent lesbian engineers you could find.
Right.
Okay. But they didn't. All right. Mayor Bass.
They just picked people, they just wanted to put in numbers.
Yeah. And so they installed these people. It's falling apart. All right. There were fire vehicles that were brought in from Oregon over the weekend. And there are actually idiots in the California Air Resources Board who wanted to ban those vehicles from coming in to fight these fires because they don't have the proper California emission certification for
Oh
air
my
pollution.
God. So here you have vehicles showing up with tanks of water and they're being told to turn around
Yeah,
because
well,
they
okay,
didn't fulfill some.
that got thrown out, but
Okay.
the mentality is just absolutely sick. And I'm telling you, it's going to change. All right. Newsom is not going to survive. There's a very good chance that the entire Democratic machine is not going to survive. But it's been this way probably since the late 1950s, early 1960s. They were already starting to change it. I mean, Sam Yorty was the mayor when I came to LA, and that was a long, long time ago in the early 60s. All right. And he was what you would now call a conservative Democrat.
Right.
He was being opposed by the communist wing. There's no other way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
The Wymans and other political families that gradually installed this left-wing apparatus. I mean, people find it hard to believe, but I've been around for a while. The Los Angeles Times in the early 1960s was a very conservative newspaper. All right.
Yeah.
That all changed when Otis Chandler came in and decided he wanted to be with the big boys and turn it into a liberal New York Times. And it was in the 60s where all this changed. And all the people at Palisades, West Side, Malibu, all got blue-pilled. But the worm has turned, my friend.
Just as a little historic note, it seems like a lot of the big city newspapers, I mean, they were targeted by the left and eventually taken over. Like the Chicago Tribune under McCormick was a very conservative paper, and they went after FDR. They went after, they revealed the problems around Pearl Harbor. They were basically co-opted, I think, in the 60s. The Manchester Union leader here in Manchester, New Hampshire, the Loeb family, once he died, that was co-opted. I mean, it seems like that's a pattern, where major communication hubs. I mean, and these papers really can define what's discussed in a city. I mean, they have huge power. The Boston Globe still wields that kind of power in Boston. And
I think the Boston Globe was always liberal.
Yeah, it is. The Globe and the New York Times, they've always been liberal, and they kind of, these other papers basically start to emulate them. And the Washington Post, I think, has also always been liberal.
Right.
But and the Atlanta Constitution, very liberal. But the other big city papers, especially as the newspaper business consolidated and you didn't have the competition any longer, where you had 3 or 4 papers, it all would go down to maybe 1 or 2. They really consolidated their grip editorially and even what's covered news-wise. And maybe that's something that's going to take a hit now. I don't know. I mean, I think
Chuck, I think in LA, it's already taking a hit because the guy that owns the LA Times announced some months ago, and ironically, he's a fairly conservative guy. And it was in the news that a number of the editorial staff quit when he decided to not endorse. It was similar to the Washington Post.
Right. Uh-huh.
He was going to turn it more conservative because they're hemorrhaging subscriptions. I think
they've actually responded to the facts on the ground, so to speak, which is Trump had an overwhelming victory, and they want to stay somewhat relevant.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's why like Zuckerberg now is kissing up to Trump, because not because he wants to change, but because he recognizes which way the wind is blowing.
Exactly.
That's business. I get it. I wouldn't trust him, but I mean, even Obama there, basically with Trump at the Carter funeral. I mean, he's like, everybody. I mean, the biggest flaw with President Trump, I think, and the most dangerous aspect of his personality is that he does seem to respond to flattery, and oh my goodness, he likes me, and that's a problem because he should not trust Obama, and Obama is there basically telling him, I have an idea. I want to discuss this with you. It's very important. And Trump is like, great. After I'm inaugurated, we'll get together privately and we'll go over it. No, that's dangerous. Obama is not his friend.
No, I would agree. Now whether he's playing 3D chess with this or what, I don't know.
Yeah.
But as I have said on a couple of occasions, I think the main problem the Democrats have now is they forgot the Richard Daley model, right? Richard Daley was the corrupt boss of Chicago for many decades.
Right.
All right. But he remembered one thing. You can be corrupt as hell, but damn it, the snow removal has to work. Everything has to operate, and then the public has nothing to complain about. Well, they forgot that part of it. So LA became corrupt and nothing worked.
And dysfunctional.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, I just hope that Trump doesn't get sucked in by some of these people like he did the first term, where you have these flatterers around him who is, they're stabbing him in the back. And I saw this in I don't know, the Jake Tapper did this show where he talked to various people of questionable background, criminals in government.
Yeah.
And one of the segments he did was on Ron Blagojevich, former governor of Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
And what was interesting, my takeaway from it was that Blagojevich's wife understood, she wanted to get him out of prison. She understood that Trump responds to this kind of flattery. So she got herself booked on Fox News, which she knew he watches. And she said very nice things about President Trump.
No.
Right? She knew. And sure enough, he pardoned him. So, he saw this. So it's like, I just hope that people around Trump are able to keep, kind of make sure that he doesn't get too influenced by this sort of thing, because that's a danger, I think.
I think that he's learned, certainly, especially with respect to COVID, where he listened to all these people that had been around for so long, like Tony Fauci. And, the fact that he was reelected, if that term applies, when you have someone between you and your next term, that the mandate was, no, you got to come in there and kick ass. So
we can only hope, because you can see as the people, whoever was running the Biden show, as they're winding down the days and the hours, they're setting all these traps for Trump. And they're doing. I noticed that Biden has issued more pardons than all the presidents before him combined.
Not only that, some of the people pardoned were just horrible criminals.
Oh, amongst the worst. The worst people. And the highest pardon, I think, list was Obama, where he pardoned 3,000 people through his 8 years. Biden has already pardoned over 8,000 people.
Yeah.
Massive blanket pardons for some of
you can bet
criminals.
That a lot of money went into his pocket, because I guess he's at the point, look, I've always been a corrupt guy, so why not cash in now? There's not much you can do about it, although they are talking about limiting the presidential pardon power, because it was never intended to be able to empty all the jails in the country because they're paying you off.
The first person to do this really in a corrupt way was Clinton. Clinton literally had somebody sitting in the White House in his last month in office and dialing a dollar, calling people. We're selling a pardon. Do you want a pardon? And this is how much it's going to cost. And he was pardoning the worst criminals right up to the day he left office. Even as he was leaving office that day, I think that Bush, came after, they found pardons sitting on the desk that hadn't even been sent out yet. They couldn't, they were like printing them and sending them out as fast as they could. And there were other things he's doing. He put out some sort of a blanket executive order, ensuring that something like 45, 50,000 federal employees don't have to go into work, right? They can work from home. That is really aggravating. I don't know if that's going to stand. But I mean, one of the
I
things
don't think it's going to stand, because the problem with this jumping the shark thing is when you have, as you like calling normies, realizing they have to show up to work, and these people don't. It's not going to happen.
not to mention that there's ways around that. I mean, if they're not going to show up to work and they can't overcome this, they could implement a system where they have to sign in from home. They can check on them every hour. They can see if they're there. Really make it, make it as if they're at work. And a lot of these people will probably either decide to go into work or they'll resign. Because they can make life very difficult. I hope that they know that. The other thing he's doing is these blanket amnesties for people from El Salvador and Venezuela, 200,000 people. He's now extended, not a full amnesty, but he's extended some program that had been put in place back in the days of Bush Sr., I guess, where, you can have like protections for 18 months. He's extended their protections. These are illegal aliens for another 18 months so that Trump can't even look at them for a year and a half into his term. Now, I think that can at least partially be overcome by, if someone is a criminal, I mean, they can be.
Yeah, if someone's a criminal, that falls apart.
Yeah, they can be deported. And then the third thing is he is locking up the entire coast from offshore drilling. I guess that he issued some executive order. There will be no oil exploration off of the coast of the United States. I don't know how we could get away with it. I don't know if that's going to stand.
I don't think it's going to stand. I think some of this is just to mollify the idiots.
My understanding is that particular executive order was issued in such a way that it's not so easy to rescind it. It's going to have to happen through Congress. It's going to take a while. And I hope that there's enough spine in Congress to do the job. So far, so good. I mean, we'll have to see. But, he's setting all these, I've heard about, people taking action in federal agencies to make it very difficult for Trump to get rid of people, to change the agenda, and doing all these bureaucratic tricks, including and right up to breaking the law. According to Senator Nancy Mace, she's talked about this, to the point where they're going to preserve those agencies. I mean, there's all these steps being taken. I don't know if it's going to fly. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, but they're doing whatever they can.
Some of it is symbolic. I mean, this idea, the whole thing with the so-called hush money, was that they knew they had no case. They never even could say what crime was committed.
Yeah,
it was all to be able to have the epithet that he's a convicted felon.
And something, nobody gives a crap about it. No. Nobody cares. Everyone knows that it's really a disgrace. I mean, and I think that, I don't know if you follow, Thomas Davis from the 29 Project. He's an attorney who is a pretty close Trump advisor, and he's a regular on with Steve Bannon. He's like, look, these people don't realize that on January 20th, the hunters are going to become the hunted. Yeah. And we're going to go after these people and put their ass in jail, if I can quote him. He says, this Mershon guy, they're going to look at he's first of all, he's an immigrant. They're going to look at whether he's here legally. They're going to maybe try to have him deported and imprisoned. They have engaged in direct election interference. Tish James, all of them. This whole, these people have made huge amounts of money for their work on this. Jack Smith, Big Fanny, all of them. They've all received handsome payoffs in their service to trying to take down Trump. And now the shoe is going to be on the other foot. It didn't work. They didn't take him down, and he's going to be back. And I think there are enough people around him, like Davis, that are going to go after these people with, you want to talk about, I mean, they put Steve Bannon in prison for some paperwork, or they get Trump, they're going to go out, their paperwork's now going to be going over. And I noticed that outside of the Department of Justice, there's a truck shredding documents.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yes.
I mean, it's, I don't know if they're going to get away with it, but I hope that, they really take it on. I know they took out Matt Gaetz, unfortunately, because he was the kind of guy that would have gone in and blown the whistle. But, so far, I think the team looks like it's going to clear. And the reports are that Hegseth has enough votes to clear, and that, the others pretty much have it in the bag. I don't think.
Yeah, well, I saw one story that they're all going to clear.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days after that, now I guess the other side is really concentrating on Hegseth and RFK. But
no, they really want to take out RFK. I noticed today's New York Times, I think out of the top 6 articles, 4 of them are about RFK. So they do not want to see him in there. Big pharma, the big media, the seed, the creators of seed oil. I mean, they're all terrified of RFK, and they're going to go after his personal life with a fine-tooth comb. That's how they usually do this.
Well, the only trouble with that is that turnabout is fair play, right? And I'm sure there are a lot of people in Congress that couldn't stand the scrutiny.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, they have a slush fund that, where they pay off people who make accusations, paid, funded by the taxpayer. And I think it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, she's saying we're going to release all of these reports, all of these names, once Trump's in office. And, it's they want to play that kind of a game, then they're going to end up getting a blowback on that, hopefully. And that includes both Democrats and Republicans too. But, let them all come out. They want to release Matt Gaetz's report, which is all hearsay. Let them all. These are not hearsay. These are cases where the settlements were made, and
so it's all documented.
Yeah, I mean, this is bigger than that. I mean, you don't make a settlement on a hearsay. So a
lot of exciting things coming along. I mean, the other aspect of this LA fire thing is there's a horrific bureaucracy in place that even if you had unlimited money and you want to rebuild in Palisades or Malibu, you're subject to the Coastal Commission. And the reach of the Coastal Commission has gone a lot farther inland than it did originally. So, as Adam Carolla said a number of days ago, just wait until they try to rebuild, and they're at the mercy of 9 lesbians on the Coastal Commission. He said it's going to take 5 years. So, in anticipation of that, Newsom has come up with this executive order saying, well, we're suspending all this. Well, okay, but there's a lot of these organizations in place, okay? And there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of political promises in place. And here's the other thing about this coastal stuff. It seems nice to live on the beach and so on, but I'm telling you, unless you have a $30 million house in Malibu on a cliff somewhere, if you're on Coast Highway, that's congested, it's noisy, it's busy all the time. There's zero privacy if you're in the Malibu colony for your minimum $12.5 million house.
Mm-hmm.
So the bloom may be off the rose on some of that. That could be, I mean, that's nothing to do with the fires other than how much you have to put up with.
Well, I mean, I think that there's probably going to be some of these super multi-million-dollar mansions. They're going to try to get federal money to rebuild them, and that's going to piss off a lot of people. We're going to have to rebuild Barbara Streisand's house. I mean, I don't know. I mean, not to single her out. I don't know. I'm not sure if her house is in any way damaged, but it's going to really piss off a lot of people. And also, we now know that FEMA has been completely compromised. We saw that in North Carolina, where something like a third of their funds have gone to help illegal aliens. So, I don't know what they've been doing in LA, but I have a feeling it's probably not much.
No, you don't even hear the name FEMA with the LA fire stuff.
Yeah.
What they're trying to do is come up with some nonsense. Apparently, the latest thing they're trying to pitch is that the big fires in Palisades were caused by New Year's Eve celebrations, sending fireworks into the hills, and somehow they smoldered for 6 days before catching fire. I mean, no one's buying that. All right.
What about the arsonists? Is that an issue?
Well, let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Me being kind of and I don't even want to call myself a conspiracy guy. I'm going to call myself an inductive reasoning guy. If you look at school shootings, if you look at these fires in LA historically, there is no way that all these were natural. It's not possible. When the fire started in the Encino area going down to Bell Canyon, West Hills, that wasn't connected to anything. It didn't spread from anything. It just started. All right. How did it start? By itself?
I saw a video on TikTok which demonstrates, and I'm not endorsing this, but it claims that all three of the major fires started at virtually the same moment. It looks very suspicious.
Yes. And what are the chances of that? All right. Because what's happening now is they're trying to get people conditioned to it. When the Bel Air fire came in, what people are conveniently forgetting is what made that so devastating, although it pales in comparison to what's going on now. I think there were 1,000, 1,200 structures involved, the Bel Air fire. All right.
Yeah.
Virtually all the homes that were lost had cedar shake roofs, which were like kindling.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of conjures up, why the hell weren't there enough lifeboats on the Titanic type of stuff? Right. Why would you put a roof on a house that you could use as kindling in your fireplace? All right. But for the cedar shake roofs, there wouldn't have been that devastation. And by the way, 99% of the loss in the Bel Air fire were in what is called New Bel Air, as opposed to quote unquote old Bel Air, which the old mansions going back to the 20s and 30s were essentially untouched because they had tile roofs and so on. All right. So point being, there was a very good reason why that fire spread so quickly. There's no reason why, as you say, these fires should have started all at the same time. Any more than there's no reason why some unemployed drifter can suddenly come up with $10,000 worth of weapons and ammo and have a school shooting. All right.
Yes.
They'll talk about investigating this. Nothing's going to come out. Nothing will ever come out. And the only conclusion is, they didn't, they took advantage of the usual Santa Ana conditions and created this firestorm. The problem is, for them, they hurt too many influential people. And hell hath no fury like some blue-pilled Palisades or Malibu guy scorned.
Well, I mean, at least that's maybe a positive byproduct of what's otherwise a terrible tragedy. What is happening on, as the Israelis like to say, on the ground right now? What do you see going on in the next couple of days?
Well, unfortunately, the winds have picked up.
Yeah.
They have what they call hot spots in a number of areas. They're probably, a hot spot to distinguish it from a horrible fire. But if you have a house in a hot spot, it's going to go up. So they got a big problem. And they have to decide, as the old joke goes, can't figure out whether you're supposed to wind your ass or scratch your watch. Is it going to be more important to maintain their political career or try to stop this? But it's
well, I would think that stopping it would help them maintain their political career.
yeah. Well, it may be too late because they're just a record of massive incompetence all the way down the line. And
now I understand that Encino Valley is threatened right now. Brentwood.
Well, it could go from Encino Hills to Hollywood Hills. But again, how does it spread across freeways and stuff? There's got to be people and copycats. How hard is it to take a blowtorch out up in the hills and start a fire?
Well, I mean, didn't they already have a citizen's arrest of some guy with a blowtorch?
Yes. Yeah, and it didn't come out that it was a citizen's arrest until 2 days later.
Uh-huh.
The LAPD was trying to check out, well, we found an arsonist. Well, no, you didn't. It was residents found a guy.
Yeah.
And made a citizen's arrest. And there had been a history, too, of homeless people living up in the hills, starting fires to cook food and whatnot.
Right.
So it's all the policies are coming back to bite them in the ass, and it could be a big political change.
Yeah, as we started with, we should wrap it up on the note that California might be moving toward, back to being a red state. I mean, between Los Angeles and all the crap on the streets in San Francisco and the utter incompetence there, and just in general, when you're caught in a lie. I mean, look, I'll use the example, the Chernobyl meltdown in Russia, right? In 1980, it was 1984, 85. The Soviets did what they always did, which is a lot of lying. They didn't even mention it for 5 weeks. And then when they finally got to it, they said, "Oh, it's all a part of the bourgeois, bourgeois conspiracy." And the Russian people at that point had it. The lie was so blatant and so continuous and so accumulative over decades of lies that it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. That was probably the main tipping point. And that's
exactly right. So you got COVID. Now you have these fires. Okay. They were given all this liberal crap. They were given their head, as the expression goes. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work because they got too arrogant. As I said, go ahead and put in all the minorities and gays that you want, but at least find people who are qualified.
Let's find good ones. Now, the California legislature, right in the middle of the fire, you have the head of the Democrat, assembly passing a bill to basically attack Trump, right? Yeah. He wants $20 million to give to who knows who as a way to attack Trump. And it was it went over as very kind of tone deaf. And there was a woman who stood up and started yelling at him. It's like, what the hell are you doing? You're spending $20 million. Don't you know that people's houses are now immolated and whole communities have been burnt to the ground? And here you are, passing another bill to attack Trump. It's like, what the hell is going on here?
Well, I'll tell you what's going on, and maybe this is the way to sum it up.
Yeah.
It's Ethel Rosenberg reincarnated. It's worth it to go to the gas chamber for the call.
To support some radical, demented, irrational, that maybe this is the final remnant of the Trump hatred cult. And, I think that's receding very quickly now. People may not remember when that was at its height. I remember it well, personally. I don't want to go into it, but it was ugly. And I don't think that's flying anymore. I think it's receding. I think that they are diminishing by the day.
Diminishing by the day, and what makes it even worse for them is they can't help themselves. In the wake of this horrible fire disaster, we got to pass this anti-Trump thing. Now, even the Democrats are fighting amongst themselves now because the lunatics
And I think because they want to survive, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we don't see, even as recently as next month, several Democratic congressmen switching parties.
Oh, it's going to happen in California.
Oh yeah, because they have to survive. They have to keep themselves.
Yeah. It's
when the Trump Department of Justice starts going after some of these people, like hopefully like Shifty Schiff and some of these other criminals, they're not going to get sympathy. It's going to accelerate. There's going to be a major shakeup. Look at this is what happened in the Democratic Party after McGovern lost. There was a major shakeup. This is where they are. They don't know it yet, but
it's going to give us material for many more shows.
Yes, indeed. So, Mike, listen, just be. Are you and your property in any threat right now?
No, okay. We're okay, and unfortunately, a lot of people aren't.
Yeah,
but I think if the winds are supposed to be bad for another day or so, we'll see.
Okay.
Well, but in the meantime, appreciate. I've gotten calls from people around the country.
Yeah,
and maybe this is the day of reckoning.
Maybe, hopefully I feel badly for people who are really suffering, especially these. There's a certain schadenfreude when you hear that Ben Affleck had to flee to his ex-wife's house. Fine, but the most of the people being hurt here are not that. They're poor. They're
just regular people. You could name a few celebrities that you may not like.
Yeah,
but there are normies in Palisades, and there's normies in Malibu, right?
Of course, and they're the ones that are being hurt. and it's going to take who knows how long to recover, if ever. It's very, very serious. And I just hope.
Well, we will see you next time. And
okay. All right, Mike.